Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Ingrid Schwarzkopf. I'm here from the Faculty of Applied Science and Engineering at the University of Toronto. I'm a recruitment officer, and tonight I have with us Professor Sachs and Rachel from the Department of Civil Engineering. Just a few housekeeping before we get started tonight. Tonight's program is to highlight and showcase the civil engineering program. Just to bear in mind, we won't be addressing any admissions-based questions. If you do have any admissions questions, please address them into the chat that you have beside your video component, and my colleague Steve will be happy to answer any questions that you may have or provide our email address for you for any further questions that you may have after the session. Without any further ado, we're going to start the evening off by really just having Rachel and Professor Sachs introduce themselves. So we'll start with Professor Sachs. If you could just give us a little bit of a background about yourself.
Hi, thank you. So I joined U of T, I'm new this year, and I'm a faculty in civil engineering, and I do research on large-scale infrastructure. And I teach the first year mechanics class. So if you come to U of T for civil engineering, you could have me in one of your very first courses first term. I'm from Toronto originally, and I did school a little bit all over the place. I went to McGill, MIT, and Cambridge, and now I'm very happy to be at U of T.
Hi, my name is Rachel. I'm a fourth year civil engineering student. I'm specializing in structural engineering, and I'm the club chair for the undergraduate civil engineering club.
Great. Awesome. So with that being said, we're going to start the evening off with me asking some questions. I came prepared with a few questions for Rachel and Professor Sachs. I'm here to learn as much about the civil engineering program as much as everyone else is. Once I am done with my questions, we'll open the questions up to the audience. So if you do have a question for Professor Sachs and Rachel, do put that into the chat, and we will make sure that they get answered at the end. And maybe we could just start the evening off with, one thing that I tend to get asked is, what is the difference between civil engineering and architecture when I'm on the road? So maybe Professor Sachs, you could answer that for us?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. There are some overlaps in between civil engineering and architecture, but there's a lot more that we do in civil engineering that doesn't necessarily have to do with architecture, where you're usually thinking about buildings. So one big subset of civil engineering is structural engineering. It's a lot of people do it. It's the first thing you think of. And if you're building a building, then you can have the architect, which decides what it looks like, and a civil engineer, which makes sure it doesn't fall down. But there's all kinds of other things that civil engineers do that we wouldn't necessarily use architects for, like design transportation systems, roads and subways, design water treatment plants, do underground excavations. And these are really interesting things that we get to build, but since we don't worry as much about their aesthetics, we don't usually involve architects to the same extent.
So there are definitely a few things that we might not have been aware of that civil engineers do. There's a lot of more depth. And what about you, Rachel? Is there anything you want to add? Or
Basically, for me, architecture is, the architect does the design, civil engineering makes sure it doesn't fall down.
Yeah.
So that's like the big difference between the two.
Awesome. Now, what about some opportunities in civil engineering? Could you touch on that, Professor Sachs or Rachel, or opportunities that you've had in your program? Rachel, you said you are in fourth year, so you've had some time to really explore the faculty, maybe some cool opportunities that you've had.
So I'd like to start off with, I've been part of GLEE, which is a Girls Leadership in Engineering Experience. So I've been able to mentor grade 12 students for this opportunity in May, where they come for a weekend and we teach them about engineering, and especially civ, when you get put into the civ groups. Other than that, I've gotten involved in student politics. So in third year, I was the social director for Civ Club. So I organized a 300-person dinner dance, and then fourth year, I became the club chair for Civ Club, where we do Frosh Week socials, networking events, panels, the dinner dance again, and then into the spring we do gratitude events and iron ring events.
Great. And Professor Sachs, could you touch on a little bit of any other opportunities that you see for civil engineer students?
So something that I would definitely recommend considering is concrete toboggan and or concrete canoe, which are two competitions where you make either a boat or a sled out of concrete and then race it. So one happens in the winter on snow, the other one in water. And it's always a really good time. They're interesting technical challenges, but also very, very fun to race.
Great, awesome. So another question that I have is, what are some interesting components of the curriculum? What are students learning in class? Rachel, maybe you could tell us about some unique stuff that you might have learned, and then we can go on to Professor Sachs.
Sure. So I'd like to start off in my third year. We did a water treatment course where we had 6 labs where we actually were in the lab doing all the processes from the water treatment, which was really cool. So we learned about like flocculation and settlement and things like that, but like hands-on. Mm-hmm. And then jumping to another third year class, we did reinforced concrete where we actually designed or did the analysis of a beam that we actually had tested in the lab to failure, which was super cool. And then I guess the last thing is we do something called survey camp. So it's about a 2-week program where you go to Minden, Ontario, and you do surveying for about a week, and you do a systems course for about a week. So you get a chance to be hands-on with survey equipment, and it's just a lot of fun and a good bonding experience for all the third year students.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah.
Did you want me to repeat
Yes.
the question? No worries.
Yes.
So unique opportunities and interesting components of the curriculum.
I think the coolest thing about studying to be a civil engineer is learning how the world works. So how a building stands up, how cars get around the city, how water gets clean. And so everything that you need to have civil society, everything you need to have people live together is all designed by civil engineers. And so picking a part of it that you're interested in through your courses and getting to learn about that is my favorite part. And you can do that, I mean, there's a lot of general courses, but also people specialize through the electives that they take.
Awesome, great. And what are some research that's available to civil engineering students? Rachel, have you partaken in some research opportunities?
So I have not personally, but I know people that you have the opportunity in 4th year to take a like first semester or second semester or full year research design project with a professor. So then you write a thesis with that, and that usually like leads into a good master's program, or you just do it individually in 4th year as a student.
And so I've had a bunch of undergraduate students who've worked with me, and my research is around how big things that we build, generally big transportation things that we build, interact with the city. So I had one student last summer who was doing 3D modeling, looking at how you can model a city automatically in a computer program. There was another faculty member that I work with who was doing air quality monitoring all summer. So last year she had students strapped up with equipment riding around the city. They did 60 kilometers a day by bike taking air quality measurements. And then you also have students working in the lab, hard hats, steel-toed boots, crushing concrete. So there are a lot of different opportunities, and I think we hire about 230 students every summer. And then also, like Rachel said, you can do in your final year a thesis project where you work with a professor to do this. But even from first year, there are opportunities to get involved in research.
Great, awesome. I mean, there are so many opportunities, right? In whether, I'm sure many of you thinking civil engineering right away, what do I want to do? But even in the program itself, there's so many opportunities. U of T engineering as a whole, we offer so much for our students, and the flexibility of our program is really unique. And I'm sure, Rachel, you could speak to that. And, remembering back yourself 4 or 5 years ago, what drew you to the program, if I may ask you?
So I'm actually from Southern Ontario in Windsor. So growing up, I really enjoyed construction projects, and I grew up in the suburbs, so we had a lot of housing going up, a lot of developments, and I thought it was really cool. But this huge project called the Herb Gray Project, which was an extension to the 401 going to a new international crossing over the Detroit River, kind of really got me into civil engineering. So just $6 billion project, just massive construction. So I thought that was really cool, and there were setbacks, and I was really interested in learning more about that. And then in grade 12, I came to the spring open house, and I met a bridge engineer who did his part in the lecture, and I got to meet him after, and I went, wow, bridge engineering, this is so cool, I'm so excited, and that's kind of why I decided to do structural and then hopefully do bridge engineering after.
And wow, here you are 4 years later and you haven't changed your mind. Don't worry, you have the option to change your mind. Most students do change their mind. Rachel just perhaps really knew what she wanted to do right from the get-go, right, Rachel?
Exactly.
Awesome.
I've changed my mind a lot.
So did I. So I mean, that's completely okay. And maybe Professor Sachs, you could tell us about what you changed.
So I originally got into civil engineering because I wanted to be a demolitions expert and blow buildings up for a living. I'm not kidding. But then when I was an undergrad, I got really interested in how you build things underground, because when you order a steel beam, you order it and you know how steel is going to work. But when you're trying to build underground, the soil, the rock, you have no control over that. And I thought that was a hard and interesting challenge. So then I did geotechnical engineering for a while, which got me into designing subway stations, which got me into infrastructure, and now I do infrastructure. So a much more circuitous path than Rachel took. And I've never blown anything up.
So your wish is to blow something up still hasn't been.
It passed.
Oh, all right. Well, I mean that's the great thing though. You can come into this program, you know, like Professor Sachs, not knowing what you want to do and switching around, or someone like Rachel who really knows what they want to do and stick to it and, you know, work hard and, you know, even probably have the support. And, you know, Rachel, maybe you could speak to how you found the support in the faculty, you know, being 17-year-old and actually, you know, finishing all the way up to 4th year and still being able to do what you originally thought. You know, how did you find that support?
Okay, so I guess in first year I was really confused, didn't know what was going on, and I didn't realize there were a lot of resources available to students.
Yeah.
So things like there are mentorship programs run through the discipline clubs, and then professors are approachable. You can actually go talk to them, you can talk to the TAs, they're there to help you.
They're humans, right?
Exactly. So you start being able to talk to the TAs, you talk to your classmates, you end up working in groups, and you really start from first year, really, you start building it from the ground up. By 4th year, you're super tight with your class. You've met a lot of professors that can act as your references and you can go talk to for advice and things like that. So I found, and even you can go talk to Nellie, who's our civil engineering coordinator. So you can basically walk into anyone's office and they're going to be happy to talk to you and really, really help you through what you're going through.
Which I think is also a very unique thing that our faculty offers, is that close-knit community. You know, such a large institution, but we have so much to offer. Large institutions gives you access, but at the end of the day, you do come home to a small, close-knit faculty. Yeah.
And there's also the first year program.
Absolutely. Our first year office super supportive right away in first year. Now, Rachel, now that you're in 4th year, do you want to tell us a little bit about why you chose or didn't choose to do PY as an option? And those of you watching tonight, PY stands for the professional experience year, but it's just such a mouthful. We just go short for PY.
Yeah. So all my friends ended up doing PY. So I'm in 4th year, so I just kind of skipped that section. But I worked over after second year, and I worked after 3rd year in a bridge engineering office. So with that experience and potentially having the opportunity to have a job after, I found that doing PY for me was not maybe my best option. So instead I got involved in Civ Club, and then all my friends went on PY. So but there's a lot of support around, and there's a lot of opportunity through PY.
And I mean, that's also such a great thing that, you probably came in thinking, oh, I'll probably do PY.
Oh, yeah.
And then you change your mind. And I mean, some programs you're locked in, and it's such a great thing that you're not locked into that. And I don't know, Professor Sachs, if you have anything to share with the PY program, or Rachel, do you know where your friends right now, where do they choose to go? I mean, I think students are probably interested to know, where do civil engineers go and work?
Yeah, and there are so many different kinds of places. Civil engineering covers such a big swath of ideas. So I have a student I'm working with next term who is currently working for Ontario Power Generation. I've had students who've gone to work for various municipalities, so for the City of Toronto, for City of Brampton, nearby places, have gone to work for consulting firms, so doing design and working on site. I've even seen some students go further afield, so really leave the region or take advantage of the opportunity to go abroad. I think one of the cool things about PUI is that sometimes you don't know exactly what you want to do, and the experience of being an engineer can be a little bit different than the experience of studying to be an engineer. And so if you go out and you do the program and you work somewhere for 12 months or for 16 months, you learn so much more about what it means to be an engineer, and that can either reinforce that you want to be a bridge engineer, or teach you, oh, I wasn't planning to take any classes in steel design, but actually seeing it out in the real world, I'm now in love with steel, I'm going to take some new classes.
So it's eye-opening, really, right? And definitely the experience you get in classroom, but for some students too, getting that real hands-on component is really important for their growth, right? Where Rachel, when we were speaking earlier, you said you want to pursue a master's, and you now know that that's what you want to do, correct? And
Exactly.
perhaps maybe when you were 17 you didn't know that, right? So now you're really gearing up for your success for your master's.
So yeah, no, for sure. In grade 12 I went, I'm not going to do a master's, I'm just going to finish, I'm going to work, I'm going to do PY, this is going to be it, this is going to be great. And then I went, okay, maybe I actually want to do my master's.
Yes.
Maybe I love structural so much that I want to go pursue it further, become a specialist, do a specialization, go to another city, try something new. So I've really kind of changed my mind on that.
Yeah. And now, what about the city itself? How have you enjoyed your time in Toronto? You said you were from Windsor, so that can be a big shift, right? Coming from a smaller city to a larger city, there's definitely a shift in that as well.
Oh, for sure. So like Windsor is smaller, but then you came to Toronto and I was just overwhelmed. There's so much to do. There's food, there's activities, there's sightseeing. The winters are cold, but it's not bad. And then the summers are fantastic. So it's like just a different culture, and just you meet so many people. It's kind of incredible.
Yeah,
So.
great.
Yeah, I'm from Toronto originally, but I lived away for a long time, and it's really exciting to be back. All of the neat stuff that's going on in the city. Just in the last couple of weeks, I went on a winter hike on the beach, literally on the beach in Toronto.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think of Toronto as a place that had beaches where you can go swimming, and now it's one of my favorite things to do in the city. Though admittedly I don't swim in the winter. And there's any kind of food I want, I can go get it. And having lived most recently in a sort of small college town, it's really nice to have all of the opportunities that come with living in Toronto.
Definitely. And now, do you know, Professor Sachs, where some of our graduates are going, like work-wise? Is there a typical company that hires civil engineers, if you have a bunch of alumni, where they would be specifically, or are they kind of just scattered?
There are so many different things that you can do with a civil engineering degree.
Okay.
So some people know, they want to go straight away and be traditional hard hat wearing civil engineers, and then they can get a consulting job or a job with a contractor and go on site and be involved in either design or construction. But then there are lots of people like Rachel who want to do more degrees, or people who go into research degrees. But then also lots of people who do civil engineering as a first degree end up doing something a little different later. So it's not uncommon to see people go into financial services or medicine or even law or something completely different, because the training you get as a civil engineer really teaches you a way of thinking that people value.
Yeah.
So lots and lots of people do great work as civil engineers, and then some people take unpredictable paths.
And I mean, it comes to me as a surprise that, a civil engineer would be a consultant, or, could you touch on that? Are you familiar, like what type of consulting work would a civil engineer perhaps do?
So there's different kinds of consulting. You can have engineering consulting, which is more designing specific projects. So I used to be a consulting engineer, and while I was there, the main thing I did was design subway stations. But I also have friends who design skyscrapers or tunnels or bridges. And then people also go into management consulting, which is generally using the thought process you used in being an engineer to solve problems that other companies are having. And those types of problems can change all the time. So it's not any one type of problem, it's more the thought process of how you work through a problem.
Which is, number one thing, engineers are problem solvers. So that's the versatility of the degree, that it can really take you anywhere, right? So I mean, most students wouldn't perhaps think, as you said, they would think the traditional hard hat engineer, civil engineer.
Which is a cool way to go.
Totally,
Yeah.
But you would never, first instinct for some students would not be, I could go into a business route where I'm, as a consultant or whatnot, right? So the versatility, again, I know I've been saying this quite frequently, but it's such a great and huge perk of the program and of civil engineering, or engineering as a whole as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, You've definitely answered my questions, and I've learned quite a bit about the program. We do have a few questions that have come through. So a question that has come through is a student's wondering, they've applied, what can they expect from the courses wise in first year? Is it going to be very general, or do you really dive on into civil engineering perhaps?
You can go ahead.
Okay. You get both. So there's classes specifically in the first year to give the students specific real world problems, often working with real people outside the university who are having a problem, who put it to students to get ideas from, and sometimes that leads to real solutions. So for instance, the library at U of T is currently being renovated using an idea that was put forward by a first year engineer. Yeah, I thought that was really cool, and you can watch the construction happen now. But then there are also questions that are more fundamental. So the course that I teach is all about how to think about forces in a system, which it lays the groundwork for designing a bridge or designing a building, but also makes you better at Jenga and pool, and even furniture assembly. So some of them are more fundamental, how you think about forces and laying the groundwork to complicated engineering ideas, but the program works really hard to make sure students get real concrete challenges right from the beginning.
Rachel, I know this was a few years ago, and so I might be challenging you, but do you remember and recall your first year?
Yeah, so first year was tough. It was good. So we had like calculus and both semesters. We had linear algebra, and we got to learn how to program. And a lot of the high school courses really kind of built on to a lot of these first year courses.
So listen, guys, high school pays off.
High school's important. Make sure you pay attention to calculus.
Yeah.
So even though it's in second semester. But one of my favorite courses in first year was actually our ESP design course. So in first semester and second semester, you get paired with 2 individual teams of 5 or 6 other students from all different disciplines, and you end up working on like a design project with them. So in second semester, we ended up with a real world client. We were designing weather vanes and resloping the backyard, and I think she actually went ahead and implemented our design after we were finished. So we were still in the project was over.
Neat.
So it was really cool.
Lots of great opportunities. We have one more question that has come through, and it's actually directed at both people. And it's a new admitted student in their first, specifically in a